Hey everybody, Phantom139 here, and I've got a short video I want to put together for today. In fact, this is actually going to be short enough of a video that I'm actually going full improv here, no script, anything. Uh, I want to really talk about seasonal content as it pertains to Destiny right now. And I know everyone's got their own big feedback point. This is right on the heels of that great big Astacross video. And just as a point of origin here, if you haven't seen it yet, I do highly recommend it. It's actually a very well put together video that talks about microtransactions and the monetization that's been going on with the game right now. And this kind of leeways into what I really want to talk about today. And it is the apparent decline in the quality of seasonal content in the game today. So we can kind of look back historically at previous seasons, and most of the time you get a seasonal activity, a seasonal storyline, and then over the course of years, it then became two seasonal activities, some story content, and like an exotic mission. But so far, in Season of the Deep, all we've gotten is the usual batch of 6-player content and then the deep dive activity, which when it first launched, I was all over this and, thought really good things about it. But now that it's had time to kind of stew a bit and settle, I'm starting to become a bit more leery of it and starting to kind of see between the lines of it and kind of pick apart those things that make it feel good. You start to lose that rose tinted glasses of the activity itself. And Bungie calls it a roguelike experience. Well, if you've ever played a roguelike game before or any other game that has a roguelike activity, you might actually know how this actually works. You're supposed to go in and start with literally nothing. You play through the game mode or activity, you get beat by it. It's actually supposed to be really hard at first because you know nothing about it, but you eventually start to learn the encounters and the mechanics of it, and then you can go back in and do it again. At the same time, while you play the mode, you're actually passively earning currency on the side that can then be spent to buy permanent upgrades that make the activity or the mode easier with time. A very good example of this type of gameplay actually exists in one of Destiny's competitors, The Division 2. They actually recently released a mode called Descent that is essentially a roguelite experience as it is supposed to be. Now, the only thing that's roguelite about the deep dive activity is the random modifiers. And even then, the pool of modifiers that Bungie has put into this activity is actually very small. And then it's not truly random because the last modifier is always the same. You'll always get the same modifier at the very end for the final boss fight. There's no change between it. Even the encounters themselves are kind of fixed in a manner. It's on a weekly rotation, which is very similar to how everything else is done. I think the real straw that kind of bent today for me, though, was in the seasonal storyline. Now, back in Season of Plunder, I really hammered on this in my State of Destiny video for seasons 18 and 19. You can go back and check on that if you want to see for sure. But the thing I really hammered a Bungie for in my criticism of that was the fact that the seasonal storyline devolved into a 20-minute gaming session where you go in, you do a small subset of activities, you get your tiny little bit of lore, and then you're done for the week. Well, the past 3 weeks of this season have been just that. And in fact, today was actually the worst that this has ever been. I basically signed in, went to the helm, listened to Saint 14's 3-minute rant, read the little text prompt from Drifter, and then it's like, go to Savathun's Throne World and do a Lost Sector. Cool. Went and did the Lost Sector, and like, okay, now I'm going to have to go do the seasonal activity, right? Nope. It's like, nope, just go to the helm, talk to Sloan, when they're talk to Sloan, and here's your cutscene, and oh, you're done for the week. Now, of course, the cutscene is definitely a great thing for the game itself. I honestly think that cutscene should have been part of Lightfall because it answers a lot more questions of the expansion itself. But, it's It's another one of those things that if you don't own the season, well, you don't get the cutscene unless you actually go online and look at it. So now it goes to the whole feedback of Lightfall didn't really answer many questions, and people who don't own the seasons, which was one of my big criticisms of the Lightfall expansion in my other video, now have to pay to get answers to the story. And then, well, guess what? This seasonal content goes away at the end of the year. So they won't actually ever get those answers if someone joins in, let's say, next year. So, all in all, it boils down to the fact that seasons really start to feel like they're only tiny little piecemeal bits of story content that get pushed forward every week. It's no longer a notion of the activities expand upon the game as a whole. If you want to talk about an example of a good season, so go back to some of my past discussions for seasons like Season of the Chosen or Season of the Splicer. Both of those seasons were actually really good seasons, in my opinion, because the activity itself kept evolving week by week. And then, an example of Chosen, we actually got updates to the core game with 3 new strikes. Now, why can't we get like something like that for a season anymore? Or in Season of the Splicer, just a really good story and then a big diversity in weekly objectives that kept being like refreshed every time. So it didn't ever feel very samey throughout the progression of the story. These past seasons, however, through the entirety of the Witch Queen year, and so far this year as well, have kind of had that same feeling. Like it feels very samey each week. There's nothing new to actually go and do. So that's one of the things that I'm not really happy about as it pertains to seasons right now. And this 20-minute session, in fact, it was more like 15 minutes from when I signed on, really kind of say broke the straw on the camel's back there. Like it didn't feel good. And if this is what story content or seasonal content is going to be in Destiny, then I really can't understand Bungie's justification for trying to get people to spend $12 now for seasons instead of $10. You're still getting basically the exact same thing. The story updates are still very small in nature, and the rest of the game is just kind of left in a dull state. So, again, it's something that I think Bungie's really going to have to address soon. I know I really didn't hit on them that hard in my State of Destiny video, and again, I do kind of apologize for that. You know, we all kind of fall for the whole rose-tinted glasses thing, and I think in my case, I kind of didn't see through this at the start of the season, and unfortunately, now it's come into play, and now we're seeing a steep decline in players. So, you know, apology, Astacross, but you're actually wrong as it pertains to the player base being big. Player bases have been on a very steady decline. You can actually look at the Steam charts, and I know you showed a bit of Steam charts, but the only numbers that you looked at were the month-to-month numbers. Well, if you actually look at the week-by-week and the day-by-day numbers, you will see that it's been a very steady decline in active players in the game, and something I really think is going to continue unless, you know, we get some kind of a big news update or something to turn this ship around. And, you know, I don't know if it's just greed or monetization things at this point, or maybe just the team's just lost interest in it. But, you know, we get weeks like this, and I just can't help but feel like that the devs just don't care anymore. And, you know, maybe others feel the same way. I mean, I personally hope that's not the case, because, you know, this has been a game that we've all played for, you know, going on 9-10 years now. We wanted to succeed. But, you know, when we keep seeing things like this, we just can't help but feel hopeful for the future of the game. I mean, I just can't see a path forward if this kind of content becomes the norm for seasons. I really hope that whatever they've got planned for the rest of this year is a complete shakeup of this, because this goes completely against what Bungie said in their Lightfall and the Year Ahead news article, and that their seasons would also expand the types of content that players would experience in moment-to-moment gameplay of the seasons. That just has not happened. It's been more of the same. And, you know, they can call it a roguelike mission, but there's, again, nothing roguelike about it. And, you know, a roguelike thing would be great in Destiny. I would actually love to play something like that, but here we are again with another season, another seasonal decline, but only this time the declines come so much earlier, and that's just because there's nothing new to do. Like, you play the seasonal content once or twice, and then you've got your fix in. And unless there's something to keep shaking it up throughout the season to keep it interesting, then people are just not going to engage with it. You know, this again goes back to what I called out on the whole difficulty adjustments too, with the game becoming more of a checklist. It doesn't have that staying power anymore. It just feels like a checklist. You do your activities one time to get your triumph done or your seal, and then you don't play it again. And for this type of a live service game, I just can't help but feel that that's a healthy decision for the game. So, you know, I know it sounds very critical of Bungie from time to time when I'm just sitting here making rant videos all the time, but you know, I'm really trying to point out the key flaws in the game, because you want to be able to see through the weeds to be able to pick out what's actually hurting the game's economy as a whole, and things that could actually help to make the overall flow of the game better. So again, impromptu video today. I didn't really have a script. I was just kind of going off of things that really felt wrong after today. And God, I really hope Bungie can do something about this seasonal stagnation. Like, you've got to change this model of weekly storylines. It's not working anymore. It's just making the game feel dull and boring. And I have no incentive to play anything else in the game when your seasonal story, the thing that's supposed to be moving the game forward, is just 20 minutes of content on Tuesday. And then I'm back to doing the same stagnating gameplay from the rest of the game that now feels even more boring because of the other adjustments you made with Lightfall. So again, I really hope bigger changes are coming, and they got to come soon. That's all I'm going to say at this point, because it really feels like to me that unless we start getting some major changes and major shakeups to a lot of these things that Bungie changed this year, that the overall story behind this game is that the seasonal content is no longer interesting, and the core gameplay is not going to be enough to sustain the people who are still around. All right, well, that's all I've got for today. Again, short video, a little shorter than usual, and we'll see if anything comes out of this discussion. I know a lot of this is going around the community right now, and I just wanted to throw my 2 cents into the mix as well. All right, thanks for watching. See you next time.